Hey everyone, welcome back to Explorium Academy Session 5. Today we are going to be building an inbound go-to-market agent in N8N. All right, so we are back here in N8N, and today we're going to build an inbound agent. What this means is that this inbound agent is going to be able to take a single lead or company, it's going to then enrich it and produce a structured output. This structured output is going to qualify this lead, saying whether the lead is hot, nurtured, cold, and something that your company should go after. Like every other N8N flow, we first need to start with a trigger node. For the sake of this example, we are going to do on form submission. All right, so for the sake of it, we're going to keep our test URL. We're going to have no authentication. Let's create the form title as company leads and say something like input inbound company name to qualify. Now we need to put the form elements. Let's do company name as a text input, and then let's do company domain as another text input. And we'll have it respond when form is submitted. Perfect. All right, so this is now in the workflow, and now when we execute the step, it will open up the form, and we can type in Google, for example, google.com. Click submit, form submitted, we come back and we can see that this is now in our output. All right. Now this is just what I'm using for the sake of example for this video, but again, your trigger can be anything. You can trigger it manually, you can trigger it on a webhook that's connected to Salesforce when a new lead comes in. The opportunities are endless. All right, so now after we have our trigger node, let's now move on to enriching this company. So we are going to enrich this company using the Explorium APIs. So let's first add those nodes in. And when you are enriching using Explorium APIs, it is a two-step process. The first thing you want to do is match. So you're going to use our match endpoint. I will first add that in. We're going to go click match. So what this does is this will now bring back a unique Explorium ID for the company that we are going to match on. This is a completely free process. It uses no credits, but it allows us to then do the other enrichments that are needed using this ID. So we have our match API open, and we need to now choose a business to match. So we're going to drag in the company name here, and we're going to drag in the domain right here. All right, now once that's done, let's execute the step to make sure it is working. Okay, perfect. So we have the business ID for Google right here. Now, like I mentioned, after we have match our match endpoint right here, we need to move on, and we're now going to add the enrich endpoint. So let's again look up Explorium API and click enrich. All right, so now that we have the enrich endpoint open, we can see that the operation is enriched, and we're going to enrich businesses for this example. We can now choose the different enrichments that we want to do. You can choose any of the enrichments that are of value to you. For the sake of example, I'll do firmographics. It's always a good one to have. Let's do technographics. Let's do competitive landscape and strategic insights. Again, you can choose any of them, and we will bring back all the information we have related to those enrichments. Okay, so now once we have that selected, we now need to choose the Explorium business ID that this is associated with. So let's bring in the business ID from our last node and drag it right here. Okay, perfect. You can see that that is now inputted right here, and we can execute this step to make sure it worked. Perfect. All right, we brought back all of the data now associated with these four enrichments for Google. I'm not going to go through all of it, but you can see it is a lot of data that we were able to bring back. Perfect. We are moving along very well. So now the next step is going to be to bring together all of this information that we just enriched for Google into some sort of structured manner. And the easiest way to do this is using an AI agent. We can use this AI agent to sift through all this information and have it determine what is useful for our use case. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add an AI agent node. So we'll go here and click AI agent. Perfect. Now that we have that open, we can go ahead and configure it. So the first thing we want to do is we want to have a defined prompt message. So this defined prompt message is something that we're going to basically feed in information for each run of this workflow. I already have a pre-written prompt that I created beforehand just to save some time. I'll paste it here. Um, you can see that the prompt is here. I'm calling in a lot of the different data points that we brought in from our enrichments and just labeling them to make it very clear for the AI agent what information is being brought in. And then at the end, I do have some instructions for it to qualify the lead. Feel free to pause at this moment and take a look at this prompt so you can use it yourself and adjust where you need it. All right, so now once that is inputted, we now will continue on to configure the system message. So in order to do that, we have to go down here and click Add Option, and let's add a system message. Now, what this system message does is it gives an overall, it gives overall instructions for the AI agent how to handle each run regardless of the information being inputted. So I, again, already have a system message written out for this use case, and I will paste it right here. I'll open it up for you. And again, you can slow down or pause the video to see what the system message is here. And so for our example, as an employee at Explorium, I want to have this AI agent qualify leads for us. So I'm essentially telling it that is a expert inbound lead qualification analyst for Explorium. I give it certain things to look out for and give it certain things to consider in its analysis. Okay, almost done here configuring the AI agent. The next thing we want to do is we want to add a chat model. So we, for this use case, are going to use an Anthropic chat model. Again, there are many other options you can choose from based on your preferences. All right, so I already have my credentials set up. And so what I'm going to do is click on my credentials, but you can go here and add your credentials by creating a new credential here and input your necessary API key. All right, so once we have our credentials inputted, this is now configured, and we can go back and we can see that this is inputted here. The next thing we need to add to our AI agent is a tool. So we're going to click down here and we want to add an MCP client tool. But let's name our MCP client Explorium MCP. And we are adding this MCP for one particular reason. We want the AI agent to have access to Explorium's documentation and all of its MCP and all of its API endpoints in order to give better information on how these leads could best use our data. So once that is here, once that is inputted into the workflow, we then need to configure it. And that is done by first adding the endpoint for the Explorium MCP. And I'll paste that in here. Then authentication, we're going to do header auth, and then we can use your credentials that you have inputted. Perfect. Now those are all configured, and we have our Explorium MCP and our chat model. Now, last but not least, we want to require a specific output format. When you toggle this on, what this is going to do is it's going to add a fourth option down here called output parser. If you click on this, it'll give you some options, and we want a structured output parser. Once you open that, it will give you these options. In schema type, you want to click on define using JSON schema. Once you have that clicked, you can arrange your output how you see fit. Again, I already have my output pre-written that you can look through when you slow down or pause the video, but this is pretty customizable and you can use natural language to describe what you want to see in each part of the output. Perfect. All right, so now we have our AI agent completely configured, and we can now run through the workflow that we have created so far to make sure everything is running smoothly. So if you click Execute Workflow, it's going to open this form. Let's again use Google as an example. Click Submit, form submitted. All right, great. All right, so now the workflow is running. All right, amazing. So the workflow executed successfully. So if we click in here, we can see that the output that was produced in the format that we asked for. The format is nice, clean, and structured, and now very easy to use in our next steps. All right, so now that we have a very structured output, we want to bring it all together into a formatted output that is very easy to read by a individual who is looking at this information. So the easiest way to do that is using a code node. So you just have to look up code here, you click it, and we're going to use JavaScript. Again, I already have this code written, but you can pause the video and take a look at the code yourself. It is pretty simple. It's essentially just taking in the information here from our AI agent output and organizing it in a very organized manner. So let me open the code so you can take a look. So from start to bottom, I'll just scroll down, but essentially it is just organizing it into one large description that is easy to comprehend. Perfect. All right, so now we can execute this step, just make sure it's working. Great. We have our output right here under description. Great, so now we have our qualified lead output. Now the next thing to do is to just decide where we want this output to go. And again, this is super customizable. It can go anywhere. It can go to Slack, it can go to Salesforce. For the sake of this example, I'm going to send it to a Google Doc. So let's go over here and add a Google Doc node. Type over here, Google Doc. The first thing we need to do is we need to create this Google Doc. So we'll open a create a Google Doc node. You can see that my credentials are already inputted, Jordan's Google account. We want to create a document in my drive. I specifically want to put it in the Explorium Academy drive. And then let's title it. Um, let's title it something related to the company name that we are qualifying. So let's go over here to some of our previous outputs. Let's go to on form submission, and then let's drag in company name. All right, great. So we have Google inputted, and then let's say Google lead qualification. Perfect. We have our title, and let's execute this step. All right, perfect. So now our Google Doc has been created. And now the next thing we need to do is add all of the information to this Google Doc. So we need to add another Google Doc node, and let's put updated document. We need to drag in the ID that we got from the previous node for this doc ID. Once that is inputted, all we have to do is drag in our description text right here. So we want to go back here to the code node output, and we want to drag in description. Once that is dragged in, we can execute the step. Perfect, execute was successful. We can go over here to my Google Drive and we can see that the doc was created with Google lead qualification. If we open it, we can see all of the information from our workflow right here. Awesome. So we just created a super simple inbound agent that you can customize however you see fit. I recommend everyone goes and gives this a try yourself and really get familiar with this structure and how we're using the enrich and match endpoints, the AI agent, the Explorium MCP, and some of the input and output nodes. But feel free to play along with it yourself. And I look forward to seeing everyone in the next session. Thank you for watching.